You'll also find that your organization evolves and changes around you. People who may have been with you at the beginning, at the start of that journey, may have moved on or moved to different roles, and you'll have a whole new set of stakeholders. As your spend grows as an organization, you'll catch the attention of different groups of people. So as soon as you start getting to the 5, 10, 15% and your spend grows, then you'll find that you'll get more focus from the finance teams, the coup teams, and those wider teams.
It's not too surprising the sort of split here between where the heavy optimization is occurring and in the areas where there's more offerings or better documentation. I think that it is just sort of go down the list. The optimizing challenge gets a little harder, and I think that's why you start to see more people moving into the basic or even not applying optimizations. And so I do think that there's more for us to do as a community to sort of share how the heavy optimization is happening in some of these other areas and how we can move some of these basic optimization practices.
On the AI front, this is a bit different for us, and we're learning. Anyone here that uses GPUs knows they are expensive, and because of how they're provisioned, you're paying for them continuously, whether you're using them or not. But that said, how we think about the cost of GPUs is actually different than how we think about the traditional CPU usage, and how we convey to our engineering teams if they're using the true capacity of what they've provisioned is also different.
And this is the first FinOps Foundation Summit of 2024. We do 8 or 10 of these per year, but this is the big one that kicks off the year and essentially gets us into all the data and information that we're going to be rolling out through other summits, events, and otherwise. So we are the FinOps Foundation. We are a trade association made up of over 15,000 practitioners around the world. We're part of the Linux Foundation. Myself and our staff are all full-time employees of the Linux Foundation. And today we're going to talk across these 3 areas. The governing board is going to cover events and community and training. The Technical Advisory Council is going to touch on the state of FinOps, the framework, and the Focus Steering Committee is going to give a quick update on the progress of that project. A reminder for everybody, our code of conduct, the chat is open for chat. So please do contribute, but please be respectful and inclusive of others. And reminder for everybody, if you sell any services, products, or anything like that, please no sales pitches, share only knowledge, don't do advertisements. And also for the legal fine print, don't share any confidential information and make sure to act in pro-competitive ways. Thank you for that public service announcement. So today's summit is going to touch on 3 big topics. We've got a fantastic panel coming up, made up of a representative from our governing board, Natalie Daley, a representative from our Focus Steering Committee, and Johnston, and a representative from our Technical Advisory Council, Bindu Sharma, alongside our CTO, Mike Fuller. We're going to get deep into the state of FinOps data, but first we're going to talk about everything that's happening in the coming months in the wide world of FinOps. So we are all running 1,000 miles an hour already because FinOpsX, our annual conference in San Diego, is less than 4 months away. I know most people don't like to plan more than 3 months out, but please book your travel now. Please get tickets now. We've already sold more tickets for this year than we did the entire first year of the conference. We expect this to sell out again this year. The first night of hotels for international travelers are already starting to fill out. So get your travel booked, get your hotel booked, get a ticket. We're an early bird. We have all 3 of the major cloud providers who are going to be there doing user groups, doing deep dives. We have a ton of content coming at this event. Speakers are starting to roll out now. There's going to be over 100 speakers who are speaking at the event. There are very few intro sessions, very little what is FinOps. It's all about how to do FinOps. It's all about getting into chargeback and automation and how to use AI and life cycles and personas. So please check out the content on x.finops.org. Get your ticket before those sell out. There's already a ton of events happening globally as well, our free community events that are open to everybody. So far, we've had Korea this year. Sao Paulo was last night with over 200 attendees. We've had Austin, Charlotte in the US, India, first meetup of the year happened, an Irish meetup as well. So look for more of these. And Google pulled an exciting one on us this year. They pulled forward their conference. So the cloud provider conference season is starting early this year, April 9th in Vegas. we will be there at the Google Next conference. We have a full day buyout of a restaurant in the Mandalay Bay, and we're going to be doing direct conversations with Google product leaders and practitioners. So sign up for this. This is an apply to attend event where you can sit down with Google product leaders, engineering leaders, services leaders to talk about your challenges. And in the evening there, we'll have a big reception for the community to mingle with community, socialize, and chat with the Google folks as well. Our biggest non-FinOps X, yes, I'm rocking the t-shirt, shameless X promotion here, is happening in London on April 18th. This is a large enough event. It's essentially a full day gathering, but about 5 hours of content. If you're in Europe, I recommend trying to come over for this event. It's going to be multiple hours of practitioner presentations. There's breakout sessions on sustainability, on AI, on deep framework updates. A number of our staff, including myself, will be there. Speakers for this will be announced shortly. And next week in New York City, I'm heading out there for this one as well. We got a fantastic, this is a smaller member summit, just about 120 people in a very intimate venue. Amazing quality presentations and speakers, and all three clouds, the product owners for billing data, will be there on site talking about Focus. Quick update on Focus. It is the FinOps open cost and usage specification that normalizes cloud billing. The steering committee is coming together next week on the 27th for a full day offsite in New York City, where we're going to have all three clouds there, as well as Ann Johnston from Capital One, Tim from Walmart, and a few others talking about the roadmap and where Focus is going in 2024, getting ready for the big releases later this year at FinOps X and other areas. An update on this, we've seen some form of native support come from all three cloud providers now. Microsoft opened a preview. Google has an export version. AWS has a kudos dashboard. We're expecting to see more releases on that coming. But the big switch you're going to see on Focus this year, last year we announced it, is getting to adoption. How do you, as an enterprise organization or practitioner, start to use Focus? So you'll see training and materials and enablement start to roll out on that. There was a big update that came out right at the beginning of this year to the definition of FinOps. This is a net new, updated, evolved definition of FinOps for 2024. Now, hopefully there's nothing surprising in this. I'm not going to dive into it because we have a deep dive piece published online, but this was updated by our Technical Advisory Council, which is made up of practitioners and clouds and vendors who came together to make some pretty material changes to the update, including things like removing the word public cloud from there. FinOps is just about cloud. We changed some of the way that definitions were defined, updated the personas. So please go read that article to learn more about the new definition of FinOps. And this is where you can find it. This is also net new. So the foundation recently launched Insights. My staff always rolls their eyes when I say this, but this is not a blog. This is like an academic journal. It's meant to get deeply into changes that are affecting the industry. So you can read about that definition 2024 update there, as well as cloud provider changes that affect the community and executive stories. Our Technical Advisory Council, earlier we mentioned, drives technical strategy. The governing board helps us drive the programs that run the foundation. We have a couple new governing board members who have joined, and really excited. One of the first things the governing board approved, we're going to be doing $1 million US dollar certification scholarship fund in 2024. Tons of certifications going out. We're aiming to certify another 10,000 people this year. This is the North Star metric and focus of the FinOps Foundation. Big shout out to Stacy Case, who runs our training and education, and Victoria Hellender, who is leading up that scholarship program. If you can't afford to get certified or trained, please apply for this. If you can't afford to do so, please go ahead and buy training and certification, as it's the primary way the foundation funds itself and enables all of these programs. And with that, wanted to welcome and introduce one of our newest governing board members who just joined from MasterCard, Tomas Tyree from MasterCard. Are you on the line? Can you do a quick introduction?
Hey, yes, absolutely. Super excited to be here. Thank you for having me. So my name is Thomas. I do tech strategy and transformation at MasterCard. Super excited to be here. Two call outs in terms of focus areas for us to contribute to the community. One, everything that has to do with sustainability and making sure we understand what the environmental impacts are of what we're doing in the cloud. And then two, driving towards real insightful product ROIs in understanding how product profitability and ROI comes together with FinOps. So those two are key focus areas. Looking forward to learn and collaborate with everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Yeah, looking forward to seeing you hopefully at FinOps X. I want to throw up Vic Saluja there because I know he's on your team. He's been a long-time FinOps ambassador, spoke last year at the conference, and it's great to see so much of the MasterCard team, Mike Jaco and Jarek and team plugging in. So looking forward to hearing more from you all as you grow the practice. Welcome. And also a thank you to all of our Premier members. The Foundation is a membership foundation. We have a large number of Premier members who are both practitioner members like MasterCard, as well as vendor members like the Clouds, and about a total of 120 enterprise organizations who are now formally part of the foundation, supporting that larger ecosystem of 15,000 practitioners. So thank you all for being a part of the community and supporting all of these programs. With that, what you all came here for, let's talk about State of FinOps 2024. Over to you, Steve Trask.
Thanks very much. Hi, everyone. As I say, we have come a long way. This is the 4th year of the report and the data. And I did want to start by saying thank you for those who took the time to take the survey. It's a great contribution to the community. The State of FinOps is fundamental to kind of the foundation to understand how we can support FinOps practitioners in the next 12 months and going forward. So I'd like to look at like who took the survey this year. The regional split is reflective of the community. It's typically a snapshot of that community, aligning to increases in South America, which has nearly doubled in respondents from 2 years ago. Some great growth there. To add to the data, respondents were from a broad set of industries, from gaming to energy. As with previous years, there is a focus on finance and technology, but we are seeing kind of increases from areas such as retail and healthcare, reflective of how FinOps adoption continues to grow. For the seniority, we have aligned the categories this year slightly differently to go with our jobs board. This is a subtle difference, but there's been no real notable change from last year. Each year, each survey, we try and refine and reduce the friction for everyone to take it. We know it's a kind of dedicated time. We'd love to, ask 150 questions, but we can't do that. We have gone down to 38 questions, and we touched on originally adoption, and we touched on benchmarks, and now we're leaning much more into industry trends to see how we can support the current and future needs of practitioners. I do also want to highlight there are no paid submissions to the survey. It is all community sourced. So I'd like to welcome the panelists. No, JR did a slight intro previously as well. Natalie Daley from HSBC, who also sits on the Foundation Governing Board, and Johnston from Capital One, sits on the Focus Steering Committee, as well as the Governing Board. Bindu Sharma from Guidewire and the Foundation's Technical Advisory Council, and world-renowned, I would say, Mike Fuller, CTO from the Foundation. Thank you all for taking the time today, and I look forward to your insights and perspectives as we dive into the data. So we want to start with key priorities for FinOps practitioners. There's been a lot of shifts in the results compared to the previous years. Reducing waste, for example, has gone quite clear at the top as well. It's been continued increasing over the last couple of years. Managing commitment-based discounts has jumped from 40 up to 43% from last year. And then empowering engineers is actually down. That was actually top in all of the previous reports and has gone down to 6th. Again, forecasting again has a little bump up, which has kind of dropped last year. So interesting to see that is in the mix again. Obviously, these challenges are slightly all intertwined. Empowering engineers is seen as a route as achieving other these priorities as well. But I'd like to turn to Anne and do these priorities resonate with you? And is there anything that surprises you? I think it's a good question.
Yeah. Well, good morning, all. And all of these that are on here actually really hit home and are part of our day-to-day at Capital One. At the top of our list here, we see reducing waste and cleaning up unused resources. If you think about what that is, that's things that are out there in your environments that are not being used, and that's really low-hanging fruit. So it's super natural to want to just take care of that right away. You can take action with low risk of causing a negative impact. With that said, automation of that is key. So you don't have to think about it too much. And so, we're going to have a little bit of an automation theme throughout this as well, but, automating, reducing that, those unused resources is certainly top of our list. And then the second one around managing commitment-based discounts. This is oftentimes where there's a high dollars in savings to be had, finding that right watermark to cover and the right thresholds. And that's how we think about unit cost optimization as opposed to resource optimization. And when we think about our optimization strategy, there's a few parts to it, but top of that list is ensuring that we have that lowest unit cost. And much of that comes from our commitment discounts, which is key. And the one other, I just want to touch on one more here, and that's forecasting, accurate forecasts of spend. I will say, I'll be one of the first to say, this is hard. There's a lot that changes throughout the year. The human labor component to annual forecasting isn't easy, but that tends to be fairly static in nature. Sure, there's some fluctuations, but it tends to be a little bit easier to predict. Your cloud spend can change pretty dramatically because those humans, they're developing new things all the time. And it can change significantly based off of what architecture design decision you've made or what those impacts are. If you have a technology decision that's, has made some unintended downstream cloud cost impacts, that can be really tough to predict. But that's also why it's so important that we're focused on being able to forecast our spend, and not just annually during that budget season that I'm sure that we all go through, but it's an ongoing thing. It's an always on. And for us, we'll catch the unintended outcomes, whether they were an architecture decision or something else, because we had done the upfront work for the prediction of how much we're going to spend. And if it differs from that, we can take action really, really quickly. And so, I see that as number 3 on this list here, but it is so important because that's how you know if you're meeting your targets or not. And that can then drive your strategy.
Yeah, there's definitely come back up. Mike, have you got any perspectives of why certain things are jumping around, especially this year?
Yeah, I think that it's pretty clear that last year there was a fair amount of economic uncertainty, and I think that that's driving FinOps teams to pay more attention to the sort of outcomes of efficiency, and also that predictability of spend, like Anne was talking about, with the need to sort of move up and mature the forecasting process. And so I think that the items that have jumped ahead of that empowering engineers effectively are those sort of attentional outcomes of efficiency. And then as you said earlier, the fact that empowering engineers is really a pathway to ensure that those capabilities are sort of being built out. And so I think that, we believe there's a fairly good connection to the economic uncertainty and the sort of key priorities changing in FinOps teams over the last 12 months.
Yeah, cool. Right. We are going to keep going because there's a fair number of slides to go through. So we segmented these key priorities by cloud spend, and they all had reducing wastes as the clear kind of top one. There is the fundamental focus on the core elements of within a FinOps practice across these areas. There are traits around maturity challenges, allocation, the cultural element in the middle, and then noticing the kind of the FinOps governance policy at scale in the larger spenders. Bindu, kind of like, do these priorities align to where you sit in this scale at Guidewire?
I would say yes, but there are certain surprises, and I'll talk about it later. I do see that reducing waste is the topmost priority, but we can always think of it in terms of gelling it with automation, which I don't see here as one of the survey response. But I think that reducing waste and gelling it with automation is what I see that most of the organization, at least our organization, is progressing towards. With the fairly mature FinOps practice, we have baked the efficiency into our code, and we continuously monitor it. So I'm thinking maybe that relates to reducing waste in the end. Then managing the commitment-based discount, I do see when you have a centralized FinOps practice, you manage all those discounts provided by the cloud providers at one department. So that is not a surprise. The other one that I see is that the forecasting from 0 to 15 million pillar and 200+ million pillar, we do see a transition. It's going down from 15 million. So that was quite surprising to me, because forecasting is a big pillar of monitoring and also announcing your cloud spend. And then that also a big collaboration working with the finance and the business and the product team. So that was a quite surprise to me, Steve.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. I think you're avoiding the cost by baking in some things in earlier as well.
Yeah, so we can always say that, the cloud spend is not necessarily directly aligns with the FinOps maturity in an organization. That's what it shows to me.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's not always a like for like.
Yes.
So moving on, we did ask what was needed to overcome the challenges, and respondents shared with us a free-form response answer. JR, if we can move on to the next slide. And we categorized the results, and it was clear that organizational alignment was by far the single most action for success. It could be almost considered a success metric for the FinOps practice. As if this is achieved, it would solve those multiple priorities and challenges. Those, just to note, those classed in other includes a long tail of, for example, specific areas like optimizations or forecasting. But there's some great examples there of actually people requiring that organizational alignment to kind of solve across the board. Natalie, turning to you, like, how did you achieve, and more importantly, how do you maintain probably organizational alignment? Or is it still a challenge? I don't know.
Hi, everyone. I think it's a really good question. And I wasn't actually surprised to see that this was a hot topic. And for me, and experience at HSBC, I think organizational alignment for me is an ongoing activity. I don't think I've ever got to a point where I can say we completely cracked it. And that's because I think you're at different stages as you move through your maturity, the organization, and your FinOps practice. Typically, you'll see, at the beginning when you first start out and you stand up a capability, especially if you're doing it within an enterprise organization, there'll be a flurry of activity and executive engagement, and you start on your journey. But then what happens, the organization's priorities change, and so do yours as a FinOps capability, and so do your strategic goals and priorities. And as a result of that, there are ever emerging senior executives, teams, departments that you should be working with, collaborating with, and maintaining that level of communication. One of the key principles of FinOps is collaboration, and that I've found, certainly in my experience, that has only extended as time has gone on. You'll also find that your organization evolves and changes around you. People who may have been with you at the beginning, at the start of that journey, may have moved on or moved to different roles, and you'll have a whole new set of stakeholders. And also, again, as your spend grows as an organization, you'll catch the attention of different groups of people. So when you are, 1%, 10%, if you are a traditional on-prem organization prior to this, as soon as you start getting to the 5, 10, 15% and your spend grows, then you'll find that you'll get more focus from the finance teams, the COO teams, and those wider teams to help manage and understand the cloud spend throughout the organization. And then I think, in my experience around the actual FinOps journey itself, so as our organization has matured, where we've tackled a lot of the low-hanging fruit, we've implemented a lot of automation, we now need to look at what we call architectural type changes into our optimization stack. We're looking at automating more, so that's working with our architectural teams as well as engineers, but also working with the finance and procurement and the wider teams that will help you move forward on your journey. So I think there are a number of changes that will happen around you, and changes that will be driven by your maturity journey as a team. And one of the key things I think to the success and to bringing your organization along that journey with you is communication and effective stakeholder management. And that is something you will always need to continue, in my opinion, and have one eye on as you move ahead.
Yeah, that culture is so important. And it's interesting how it develops and changes, as you say, as soon as you become more significant. But yeah, I will point out that the point on automation is really, really good at the moment, because when we're looking at the second priorities, which you're going to move to in a second, actually that's coming up more and more within the data. But thank you. So as we move to kind of secondary priorities, along with key priorities, this year we asked respondents to specifically flag answers that have increased and decreased in priority, secondary to the ones that are key. So we could understand potential future direction of priorities to challenges and pain points, almost like where are you heading as a flag for that. And as we show, automation actually tops the increased priorities with just over 50% of practitioner responses. But the top 3 following priorities are all very close. Automation as an increased priority appears to suggest that practitioners are looking towards automation to both build and mature their FinOps capabilities, as Natalie was kind of touching on there. I think you were. On the other side, on decreasing priorities, there was a smaller amount of respondents, nothing as large as the increased ones, with acquiring talent is topping decreasing priorities. We still had 10% of respondents flag it as a key priority. So it's a bit of a mixed view. We also see continued job listings on our job board on the foundation. We're looking at a kind of a theory that would say more mature teams have potentially finished growing out their teams and looking to kind of do more with automation as their cloud build grows. But we're seeing those continuous teams be built out as FinOps adoption continues across regions and other industries. So, Anne, I'm going to turn to you and kind of does this correlate with your practice and how you're looking at automation and your team kind of structure, or?
Yeah, it certainly does. And I'm actually going to first start with the decrease in sort of the staffing. I think it's really interesting that industry-wide that is something that's decreasing, because there comes a point in every organization's journey where you have enough humans to do the work. I mean, sure, we all like our teams to grow indefinitely, but that's not always going to help our cause. There is, even though it's a decreasing priority, that also doesn't mean that we won't see job postings, Steve, as you mentioned, that they are still on the boards in high volumes. I think that we'll continue to see those postings because organizations are in different parts of that journey, as you mentioned, Steve. Some are still starting up, some are still continuing to grow, and some have reached that point of maturity. The other part of it is attrition happens. We're not seeing a trend in FinOps teams decrease in size, but done right, most FinOps teams can almost self-fund themselves from the savings that they generate. So it's this balance, this equilibrium that I think that industry-wide that we're seeing. Now, we may have the humans that we need, and that is why we turn our attention to the automation component to it. The more that can be done centrally, the less that you're going to have to do to ask teams to take action in a campaign style way. And so that automation and enablement is something that is going to continue to be more and more important over the years. An example of this is for organizations that have a centralized deployment pipelines. It's worth investing in the automation integrated with that pipeline. So right sizing happens right there, as opposed to having to ask someone to do it later in production and deployment. Another example, we talked about a couple slides ago around cleaning up that unused resources. We talked about doing that in an automated way. So it allows your team to focus energy on your more complex efforts while keeping all of those basics well managed. So to summarize, our teams will continue to be staffed. We'll continue to have job openings and postings, and we're going to grow. But those folks also need to be focused on the automation, because that is what is going to empower you beyond having an additional headcount and allow you to take on those more complex tasks that have opportunity to save you even more money over time.
Yeah, super interesting on the automation. Mike, have you got any aspects on this?
Yeah, I think that, there is definitely a story here around doing more with less. I mean, automation with staffing, but I do also highlight the fact that it's only 20% of teams that are deprioritized or decrease their priority in hiring staff. And we saw on the earlier slide that over 10% saw staffing as a the key to unlocking their challenges. And so I think this is a mixture of some of the more sort of advanced or earlier starting FinOps teams now finally reaching that size that is right for them, but also looking towards automation to be able to sort of really mature those practices. And we have some more automation dig-ins coming up, so should be good.
Yeah, we have more data coming on this. So by also splitting the practitioners that indicated increased priorities by cloud spend, not to confuse it with key priorities, there's not too much across here to kind of point out, but it is notable how AI and ML costs we see for the first time appearing as it rises to joint second actually on the higher spenders. But it's not appearing in the other areas. I would also like to call out kind of sustainability is not mentioned here. I've got the top responses, but we do have more details on that later. Okay, so we're going to dig into some of the specific topics. I'm going to take a sip of water because I know the next slide. Okay, so related to the top priority of reducing waste, we asked where and how much respondents are optimizing. The obvious areas such as compute storage remain top, most likely due to the fact these are the largest areas of spend, and obviously the most mature optimization offerings and documentation to follow. There's still large amounts of basic optimization, that purple kind of band in the middle. This could be holding teams back from realizing their full benefits, and this is probably what they're kind of looking to kind of take advantage of within those priorities. And over 50% of respondents are ignoring AI, ML at the bottom line there. Cost optimization, predominantly it's basic optimizations, and it could be limited optimizations due to the services they're using. But I would definitely look at that in 12 months' time. Like, how much is that going to be growing? Mike, I'll go to you. It's like, where do you see the biggest opportunity for increasing optimization efforts? That is the top key priority.
Yeah, I think, as I said, it's not too surprising the sort of split here between where the heavy optimization is occurring in the areas where there's more offerings or better documentation. I think that it is just sort of go down the list, the optimizing challenge gets a little harder. And, I think that's why you start to see more people moving into the basic or even, not applying optimizations. And so I do think that there's, more for us to do as a community to sort of share how, the heavy optimization is happening in some of these other areas and how we can move some of these basic optimization, practices more into that heavy area. But also involve some of those who are currently ignoring some of those optimization areas. I think that when you get down to the sort of the AI MLs, they're probably highly dynamic workloads. They're not sure what that looks like, so they're less certainty in exactly what to do and how to optimize it until that sort of maybe settles down a little bit. And so, but the other thing I guess is this probably closely matches a lot of organizations' spend allocation across these areas. And so, really it's a matter of trying to figure out how much of that purple in a top line, moving to a green would be more impactful than maybe moving something down lower in the list, from no optimization to some.
Yeah, from a complexity point of view as well. Thank you. So we're going to move on to automation. So with automation being the top increased priority, it's interesting to understand how practitioners are currently approaching automation. So just to kind of digest the chart here, the green is fully automated. There's no human interaction. The purple is human approval. So it's automating data collection, reporting, then human decision prior to an automated action. The blue is automating plus human action. So it's data collection, but leaving humans to action. And the yellow then is no automation. So the majority of automation, is that in detection reporting, with humans left to perform the needed tasks in that response to that automation. There's very low numbers, fully automated solutions, and also people actually doing it and implementing it. For those developing automation, we believe it's important to understand the desire of being fully automated, hands off, no one's touching it. As people develop, how much is there? Where do people want to get to? I think is a question we're looking at. Natalie, I'll come to you kind of like, how much are you fully automating? And what's the desire? I'd love to understand the desires and almost the barriers to kind of like getting there.
Sure. So at the moment, I'd say we're firmly in the purple and blue section across each of the streams that you've got here. And it really depends. We look at each stream individually. Each one dictates in a way how far you can go with automation, depending on the way your organization is structured and also the way and your risk appetite. So as a FinOps team and a FinOps capability, we have a desire to automate as much as possible. The challenge that we face, which we are regularly reviewing and working with the organization to understand, is the risk appetite for that. So making automated changes in a business environment when you are not directly related to the business is a challenge for us, especially for production. But dev environments, we find that we've been able to push the needle on a lot of things over the past couple of years. But with production environments, as you can understand, there is a challenge or a concern to be impacting, applications that deal with the general public, for example, right? So I think there will always be an element when it comes to certain applications or workloads environments where we will need to partner with the owning business function and have some sort of an approval step. But once that's given, the hope is that we'll be able to move to automating a lot of the key actions. And then given that we are a bank, a global bank, we are a heavily regulated environment. So that means that a lot of the tools that are out there, and each month we're seeing more and more emerging, but a lot of the tools that are out there sit on public cloud platforms. And for us, that means that's an external application making changes on our internal environments. And that is not something that we are comfortable with doing. So at present, so again, and that's a bank-wide mandate. That's not something that we'd necessarily be able to overcome in any time soon. So it's a real combination of getting that balance right, of the right processes to automate, the risk appetite of the organization themselves and the businesses, and then what your overall guidelines are to enable automation. But that said, we've come a long way in our automation journey. We automate a lot of our internal housekeeping processes. We automate a lot of our, I suppose, low risk optimization activities. And I think it was Bindu that was talking earlier about actually implementing some of the optimization activity into our deployment patterns and our CI/CD pipeline. So that's more prevention rather than cure.
Yeah, it's interesting you're saying about the kind of like, depending on the environment, one of the pieces of maybe for next year, it's like, that's what we need to bring into the data, like how much automation you're doing in development environments rather than production, to see the kind of different of where people are kind of deploying that.
Absolutely. I suspect you get quite a different answer depending on where you're performing your automation, and also the ownership of the environments as well. Yeah,
and just seeing how that, as it increases, flagged as an increased priority, how much is it actually going to change? How much actually much are people going to do about it? Thank you. So moving on to forecasting, we asked respondents what forecasting features they had implemented, had desires or plans to implement, or had no plans at all. Many respondents had features that are desired or currently planned. That's the purple section within the middle. It shows interest in further maturing this forecasting features for most organizations. Potentially there's more attention. There was another question on the survey where, what's the level of increased attention And forecasting, granularity, communication, adhering to budgets, I think it's 57% of people across those respondents said there's more organizational attention on this area, and it's increased as a key priority. So it's definitely more kind of business attention on this. Mike, could you shed any perspectives or kind of insights to this?
Yeah, I guess we we saw forecasting sort of turning up on the list of priorities there. And then generally, we're trying to understand exactly what are the features of forecasting that practitioners are taking benefit from, or which ones are the ones that they're still needing. And you can sort of see from this list that while there is some sort of level of sort of implemented split across the sort of different feature sets here, pretty much everything has a high level of desire or plan to implement features, which definitely shows that forecasting can and is desired to improve in a lot of areas, a lot of sort of ways, a lot of attributes of the forecasting process. And so I think that we could ask more questions around what the variance from their forecast to actuals are, but really, if you look at that over the last couple of State of FinOps surveys, they've been slowly improving and sort of getting to numbers that seem reasonable for most organizations. But we wanted to dig inside what that percentage looks like and what is it that's going to get us further down that better forecasting estimation happening within organizations.
Yeah, it's definitely something we need to dig into more with the community. So moving on from that, we're going to hit an interesting topic here. I said we're going to talk about sustainability a bit more. So we asked, how do FinOps and cloud sustainability interact in your organization today and in the future? Across two questions, if we could nudge the slide along. Yeah. So we're looking at the global view. And we found a shift in how FinOps practitioners interact with their sustainability teams. Only 19% of practitioners currently collaborate with their sustainability teams, or it's the job of the FinOps team, whereas 50% of respondents said they see that changing to that state. As 64% currently have no interactions in any way with their sustainability team, it presents quite a shift from where we are currently today. So there's definitely kind of a change coming. In addition to this, there was 17% currently just providing the data to the sustainability teams. And a lot of people do that. But this prediction, they predict that would drop down to 11%. So it's not just they're going to be just providing data, that movement. They're going to be actually moving to a closer collaboration with that. And as you realize, there might be a regional element to this. So we wanted to kind of split that out as well. So if you can shift to the next slide. So as the data shows, when comparing North America to Europe, Middle East, Eastern Africa region, the EMEA practitioners are seeing a larger swing within this change in the future, most likely due probably to the regulation looming. However, that there is a delay within that coming into force. It'll be interesting to see how quickly this swing comes into play. But Bindu, I know you also lead up the sustainability special interest group. What are you doing today, and how do you see that changing in terms of collaboration over the next 12 months? Do you see yourself getting kind of closer and changing the way you do things?
Yes, definitely. As you mentioned about the SIG, as part of the SIG and looking at this data, it makes it more prominent. Let me quickly talk about this data. We see that in North America, in both areas, the North America or EMEA, the growth is threefold. What I see here in terms of collaboration, and again, going back to small, medium, and big-sized companies, like say small and medium companies, where FinOps practitioners are themselves providing the data, and maybe the marketing or ESG team is just using the data as is for small, medium companies. But for big companies, they might have a sustainability practitioner or a sustainability architect in place. So I see the FinOps practitioner collaborating with them and getting more insights into maybe other scopes of carbon where they want to provide in the big size companies more detailed data. So that is one shift I see, getting more collaborating with more of with the ESG teams in place, again, depending on the size of the company. If the ESG team is formal in big size company, that's what I have seen. Whereas FinOps practitioner in small size company, they provide the data on their own. In terms of what we are doing as part of helping the practitioner is what we want to come out as, sustainability environment is everyone's responsibility. So first thing we want to do is what is our responsibility as sustainability in the cloud is aligned with the new FinOps framework coming up. Make sure our sustainability is aligned with those all principles. So that is the first task, identifying where we should focus on SaaS or PaaS or IaaS, because, I think as a practitioner, our responsibility does not lie in terms of for engineering part where we just working on cloud cost efficiency. We also work with procurement team. We work with IT operations to bring the cost down. So how to bring carbon awareness culture in those departments also. The other area I see is building the contents and material for folks who are just either starting off or when they will start off in the sustainability journey in their organization, to have some success stories, those playbooks available to help them and get them started. Setting up, coming up with some best practices on understanding what the driver is inside your company. Is it a customer request, or it's just engineering passion that they want to go and check out their carbon data on what they are deploying? Or it's an investor requirement for a small size company that, how much carbon aware your organization is. They want to understand that before they give the funding. So understanding the driver and then setting up the best practices and getting started with the sustainability journey. The other area I think is that we see the distinction here already, the North America and EMEA. So we need to come up with maybe a centralized repository where practitioner can come and see the current regulations that are out there, where based on their region. It's like a one-stop shop where they can just find what are the current regulations for reporting, for getting the data and such.
Yeah,
so,
I think it's definitely kind of like the informing and how can we help that 20% get to that 59%, and that kind of like, how can we support those practitioners through that?
Exactly. So I think this all collaboration is in part of FinOps practitioner inside their organization, what they can do to facilitate and provide the data. But other part of the collaboration is there are other initiatives from Linux Foundation, right? Like LF Energy, Green Software, which are working on different scopes, other energy sources where carbon is also impactful. So collaborating with them also, and then maybe you want to create a full dashboard, like we are only responsible for sustainability in the cloud, but those folks are responsible for sustainability of the cloud. So collaborating with them and see what kind of reporting or dashboards or tooling we can come up with.
Yeah. I am going to move us forward. Sorry, we've got a few more slides to get through, and I know we come up on time slightly. So we asked each persona who has increased or planned increases in FinOps training. There are increases across all personas, but most notably engineering. This was broken down to 50% of respondents having increased training and a further 26% having a planned increase for their colleagues as well. We were looking at what this result of this training could be, and this is what led us onto the next slide, where and felt that asking who found the most value from self-service reporting, and they were correlated. Mike, do you have an aspect on this as well?
Yeah, so I guess first and foremost, self-service reporting is making that FinOps data, available in reports that the different persona groups across your organization are able to sort of go and ask their own questions of your cloud spend. And we think that this is very important to build that culture of FinOps within the organization where you're able to get access to the answers of data without sort of waiting on that central FinOps team. And I always sort of used to say in my previous practice that if I can empower people to have the conversation around cloud spend without me in the room, then my job is done well. That you've given them all of the right tools to do to make decisions around cloud spend empowered. And I think that the focus over the last 3 years on empowering engineers is sort of related to training improvements across those sort of groups. And then that's translating to engineering knowing how to use those reports that are made available to them to find the value that they're looking for. And then I think that, it's important that we look on the sort of right-hand side of this graph and think of how can we empower some of those other personas within the organization to get access to that sort of data sets, and making sure that they understand how they can utilize it to their best abilities.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see this, and how going back to the sustainability point, it's kind of like that's going to increase in the kind of demand there as well. Okay, thanks, Mike. This next one's a bit of a hot topic. So we asked for free-form responses on the AI ML costs in this, which is a new area. So it's the costs from that, not applying that to FinOps. We categorized them, no impact, which had the large majority, happening soon. For example, those stating they're seeing it costs coming in the year, already got a date on it, it's kind of going to start, and those already impacting. Other trends we saw in the kind of comments was people are offsetting cost efficiency savings and putting it towards their AI spend. There was a struggle to tie the business value to AI initiatives. And then kind of there were growing challenges around allocation models and shared costs. We also wanted to see how that looked for the higher spend. Going back to the increased priorities, we did see this in the higher spends. So we did actually kind of like cut that data by those kind of spending more than 100 million annually on their cloud spend. We can flick to the next slide. We can kind of show the difference. There we go. So you can see it kind of flips across. So it's actually impacting 45% of people. And the comments around that was the speed of increase. They're definitely seeing it impacting. Whereas I think the lower spenders are kind of, that will be coming soon, I expect. But definitely starting to impact those who have a significant spend in cloud. And if we can go to you, it's like, how is specifically AI costs impacting your practice now, or what changes do you think are going to happen in the future?
Yeah, and I'll talk a little bit about AI and ML here, since they tend to be grouped together, because they both have predictive components to them, which I think is kind of why they naturally go hand in hand. But how we think about them is actually a little bit different from each other. On the machine learning side, this is something that we have been looking at for the last couple of years, and we've matured our practice around that. And where we are today on it is actually looking through our cost model. I'll say for us, the machine learning applications, they tend to be more platforms that have many users and many different parts of the organization taking advantage of all of their great features. So we've, gone from having really an opaque chargeback model to what we're really moving forward with is a shared responsibility model, and that if you're going to have the platform, it needs to be architected in a way that provides the right functionality at the right cost. And if you're going to use the platform, you need to use it in an efficient manner. And when both of those things come together, you have an cost-efficient platform, but you don't have an efficient platform with only one of those. On the AI front, this is a bit different for us, and we're learning. Anyone here that uses GPUs knows they are expensive. And because of how they're provisioned, you're paying for them continuously, whether you're using them or not. Maybe someday, we'll be talking about serverless model training, but we're probably not there yet, although maybe that's the next venture. But that said, how we think about the cost of GPUs is actually different than how we think about the traditional CPU usage, and how we convey to our engineering teams if they're using the true capacity of what they've provisioned is also different. If we treat them the same, they're going to be wagging we're going to be wagging like the naughty list finger at folks to right size, when in reality that won't lead to the right outcome for our business purposes. So we're still working through that, but thanks to so many partners in the industry, we're making great progress. But as far as like where things are going here, to me, this is a step change in how we think about cloud spend, because it is fundamentally different. We had a step change from thinking about, in AWS terms, EC2s to serverless, to Lambda. That was a pretty big step change in how we, or at least our mental model. Now our mental model is having to shift again as we think about GPUs, because they act differently and they're used differently, which means we have to report on them differently and have different actions. So it's, I'll say that we are going through that step change now, but it's been quite a journey, and so many industry partners have helped us think about it and what could be right for us in terms of how we report efficiently.
Yeah, it's definitely an area that's going to be coming in quite heavily, I think, to a lot of people and kind of understand it. But I appreciate the insights there. I know we're coming up on time. I do want to get one more slide in, if that's possible. And it's around tooling. So the average amount of tools remains flat at 4.1. We have categorized the tools here to show proportions, but they are heavily connected. They're not necessarily separate. We're still working on some of this data. People are using tools with their 4.1, 4 tools, we'll call it, are using tools from these multiple categories together. We're looking at those combinations about how people are using native tools with platforms underpinning homegrown, et cetera, et cetera. It's a complete combination across those. But we are going to remain agnostic. We're going to avoid overlap with analyst tooling maps, and we won't be sharing any ranking or individual tool usage. But we are looking forward to kind of providing more, popular tooling combinations at different cloud spends, as such forth. So just to kind of understand it more, rather than having them necessarily split out. But the average number of tools has remained the same. So we're looking to provide more insights. We are going to be, we've already posted to the FinOps Insights an article around the summary of State of FinOps. Please, if you're taking screenshots, if you're using the charts, please attribute the FinOps Foundation correctly. Within these, there's more details on that there as well. And I do really want to thank the panelists for their time, inputs today. I do really want to kind of hoping we can have a further discussion with Natalie around sustainability, because I know that's part of your practice as well. But I know coming up next month, Mike, we've got some framework changes that also kind of talks around the topics here. Do you want to take a couple of minutes to cover those?
Yeah, so the TAC has been quite busy working alongside the staff and the community around what the next sort of refresh of the FinOps framework is, and so got some exciting announcements coming out over the next month. The next State of FinOps, next monthly summit call, we'll definitely dig right into that and sort of cover off sort of what has changed and sort of explain sort of what changed and why. So definitely put that in your calendars when that comes through.
All right, thank you so much to all the panelists and everybody who submitted data and worked through this. Great insights. A reminder, go read more insights here on this site. Events.finops.org has all those upcoming events that are happening. There's also a what's new breakdown. And before you go, we're trying something new right now. So those of you who are members of the foundation or practitioners, if you should have received a calendar invite to an after summit discussion forum, because this one gets so packed, it's hard to have smaller chats. So we're going to be ending this Zoom call here, and we're going to be switching over to that one. And you should have a calendar invite for that in your calendar invite. So again, thank you to everybody who attended, practitioners, members, panelists, really amazing stuff, and look forward to seeing you all next month when we roll out the capability and framework updates for 2024. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for watching. We hope to see you during our next virtual summit. In the meantime, check out previous summits or the rest of our YouTube channel. We appreciate the support.